I told you that this year's Apple event is not as exciting as previous years. In this video, I'm going to break down all the most notable items that happened in the event, along with some honorable mentions and potentially some items that you may want to buy for yourself. Let's get right into it. Apple pretty much started off their event by talking about the brand new Apple Watch. So Apple launched with the new Series 10 watch. It's the first ever watch to get an OLED display, and it's their thinnest ever watch. Allegedly, it's 40% brighter when viewed from an angle, which is pretty cool. And it has a nice new jet black finish, which I suppose the likes of Marquez Brownlee and everyone like that would love. It's the thinnest ever Apple Watch, and it's said to be 10% thinner than the previous one. And with that, in 30 minutes, you can charge it up to 80%. Personally, if I was in the market for an Apple Watch, I would have preferred the same thickness with a bit of a better battery life. And in this event, they didn't actually mention anything about battery life for the kind of standard Apple Watch. They did release a new Apple Watch Ultra 2. It also has a brand new finish, which is satin black, which I actually think looks pretty cool. They also released a titanium Milanese strap with it, which actually looks quite nice and could be paired nicely with the standard silver finish. But apart from that, there was no real updates, and it's still the same kind of $799 if you're in the US. So still quite expensive for what it is. I just wish they'd take the battery from that and start to try and fitting it into the more standard models. It's the reason I don't use my Apple Watch, and it's mainly because I just simply cannot get a day or two out of the battery. You know, after the end of the day or even before the end of the day, I'm looking for somewhere to plug it in, which is just not ideal. Next up, and to my surprise, they released new AirPods. So they didn't go ahead and release new AirPods Pro, which that was kind of the main thing that surprised me, but they came out with AirPods 4. So this is kind of an upgrade to the standard line of AirPods. And to be honest, it looks like a really big bump. It features the H2 chip. There's a brand new comfortable design is what they're calling it. They use some mad large data set of ear sizes and ear shapes and stuff to make this apparently. It has improved quality spatial audio. They kind of had a big point around the hands-free acknowledgement or declining of calls, where you kind of nod your head if you're in a lift surrounded by people, or you shake your head no, and that will kind of dismiss or answer a call. I think that's pretty cool, and you're going to get that on kind of all the newer models of AirPods anyway. It also features voice isolation, so if you're on a call with someone, they can kind of hear you perfectly in a noisy area. I've yet to test this fully though, so yeah, I may have to do another review on AirPods. And it's said to have 30 hours total battery life, which is great, of course. Interestingly, they nearly have two different model lines now with their standard AirPods. They have one that's $129 and then one that's $179. And that just gets active cancellation. So I don't know if it's worth the extra, but we'll have to wait and see for some reviews. I might pick them up, maybe not, but we'll have to wait and see what the reviews are like on them. They then also talked about the AirPods Max. Essentially no changes. I think they got new colors and updated to USB-C. That's about it. And then the big surprise to me was AirPods Pro. I was expecting an AirPods 3 or, you know, a new model line of AirPods Pro, but Apple didn't give us that. And to me, that tells us that AirPods Pro are in a good enough space that Apple don't need to update the product line, which I think is great for all of us who own AirPods Pro 2. I kind of debated on buying mine a few months back, and I just took the plunge anyway, and I'm kind of glad I did. But if you've watched previous videos of mine and you've commented, I would have responded to people on the AirPods videos in particular to kind of hold off until this event and see what you think. A few questions I'm being asked now is, should I get AirPods 4 or the AirPods Pro 2? It really does depend. Look, I'd watch as many reviews as possible. If you want the latest and greatest AirPods 4, sure, go for that. But I just think AirPods 2 still have that edge, and clearly Apple thinks so. What's really cool, and I don't think I've seen Apple do this properly before, or, you know, where they're not releasing a new product. So what they've done is they've essentially passed on upgrades to the AirPods Pro 2. So you can actually do a hearing test with the AirPods Pro 2, which is really, really cool. And it has built-in noise protection stuff now, so it's allegedly supposed to help protect your hearing. And for those of you who potentially have hearing issues, they're building AirPods Pro 2 to become like a hearing aid, using that outside, the way you can hear the outside. They're going to turn that into some sort of hearing assist function, which is really, really cool. Let's move on to the, I suppose, elephant in the room, which is iPhone 16. Let's be real, guys. There's no massive update from 16 to 15, and there never really is every year, I suppose. But at least from 14 to 15, you had the change in metal. So, yeah, it went to titanium. But from 15 to 16, what do you get? You get a new switch, which is kind of cool, a haptic switch. or button. They seem to avoid using the word button, which is really strange. The standard models come in a really cool new colors. I actually really like the vibrant colors. I know I've seen complaints online about how vibrant they are, but I actually think it's pretty cool. They both come in, there's one model in 6.1 inch and then the Plus is 6.7 inch. So no change in size over last year's model. It has the action button and it also has the A18 chip. And of course, there's a massive focus on Apple Intelligence. And I'll do a separate video on Apple Intelligence or AI and breaking it down and stuff like that once we start to get these iOS releases, but it's looking pretty promising from some of the demos that they've showed us, so let's just wait and see on that one. Now, the iPhone 16 Pro did get some improvements. They've moved up to 6.3 inches for the Pro and 6.9 inches for the Pro Max, which is just huge. Like, it will have the A18 Pro chip, the larger display, the always-on display, of course, and they've upgraded their titanium and apparently the scratch resistance on the glass, which is great. There's 4 colorways. The coolest and the newest one is the Desert Titanium. It looks more like the old rose golds, but more of a deserty, I suppose, sandy color, which is pretty cool. It also has that haptic sensor that you can kind of zoom in and out. But I was watching some reviews again, and people are saying that they've trained themselves to use the built-in functions on the iPhone with their thumb, so they're probably not even going to use it. But it is actually quite cool, so I can see that as somewhat of a good feature. It looks like they haven't changed the price, which is something I predicted in the last video, that's brilliant. Look, if they were increasing the price for such minimal feature changes, I think people would be quite annoyed. And this definitely is a midlife refresh rather than a complete new model line. So let's see what happens with iPhone 17. That could be a completely new refresh. Who knows? I won't be upgrading anyway. I'll stick with my 14 Pro Max. And to be honest, if you haven't watched my last video, I'd recommend watching it on should you upgrade your phone, because the reality is if you're on one of the new devices, 14 or 15, you do not need the iPhone 16, and I just save your money and wait until 17 or even 18 if you can. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe, leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.